Welcome back to another episode of Please Me, and thank you all for being here. Today I have the incredible pleasure, and I mean pleasure, to introduce you to an incredible talent. Her name is Roze, and if you know her music, you will know what an incredible talent she truly is. She has performed all over the country and has been featured on various TV shows, and I personally believe that we haven't seen the best of her yet. She is in her prime of life, I believe, as an artist, mother, and woman, and I have enjoyed watching her do her thing from afar, always cheering her on. Her sultry voice lends itself perfectly to her hip-hop soul genre, and you are all going to love her new album called Platinum, and her new single that she just released called Pressure. So without further ado, here is Roze. Hey Roze, tell me about your new single.
Hi, everyone. So I'm releasing a single called Pressure. And it's basically just talking about how you need to find your inner strength to be able to be the best person you can be despite all the adversity. So that's what it's called. Like a lot of times in our community, we say you're giving pressure, applying pressure, right? And that pressure can mean a lot of things. It means, I'm pressing you to be interested in me, or, like somebody's really showing interest. And so I just took that and applied it to, life. I feel like sometimes you're being suffocated, and sometimes you want these things and you're trying so hard and you feel like you're in this rat race, but applying pressure and also giving pressure. So while the pressure is being applied on you, you're going to give it back and be the best you can be by giving your best to yourself.
I love that. I love that. So you mentioned relationships, and at this point in your life, I know that for me, there's been a lot of incarnations of what being in a relationship is and what I really want truly for my life. What is your view on relationships at this point in your life?
It's definitely my view on relationships has definitely evolved over the years. Sometimes you learn more about yourself and what you need in your life as you grow, right? So you grow through relationships sometimes that don't serve you. Sometimes you realize who you are personally and what type of relationship you need, or the type of love you need from somebody, or just companionship. So for me right now, I'm learning that I need a partner, a business partner, a supportive partner, somebody who doesn't necessarily have to be by my side at all times, but who I feel is by my side at all times. Someone who will represent me the way I'm representing them, and just supporting me through life, because I'm a very generous person. I'm a very loving person. I just want that type of reciprocation, right? And learning my love language and knowing how to tell someone what is your love language. So I'm learning a lot about that.
That's amazing. I absolutely love that book, The Love Languages, and that's what you're alluding to right now. So just out of curiosity, what is your love language?
My love language is affirmations, touch. I'm a Leo, right? So I need to be praised all the time. But no, I mean, being an entertainer and with my personality, I feel like I'm constantly under this like lens, right? A critical lens. So it's important to me for somebody to tell me they're proud of me. It's important for me to someone recognize how hard I'm working or what I'm working on, or even ask me what I'm working on so that I can share with somebody. So as far as like relationships go and my love language, it's definitely just someone I could feel like I could trust, and definitely physical touch, but also those affirmations that make me feel like I'm supported, like I'm needed, like I'm wanted.
Absolutely. I think affirmations from your partner are so important because I know for me, even like being away from my partner for a little while this past month, I really need him to reach out and tell me continually, I love you, I'm interested in you, I want you every single day, because every single day you need to reaffirm that to your partner. So no day can go by when you're not doing that for yourself, for your relationship. And so demanding that too is really important. because if that's something that you really need in your relationship, words of affirmation, and you're not getting it, then you're not going to have a full heart, and you deserve to have a full heart. So it's really important to speak up and tell your partner what you really want. And I think that that's really what this podcast is about. Just trying to open up communication between people, like this girl talk, but also allowing that to translate to relationships so that you can really get your needs met. And I think that's so key. For me, my love language is quality time. I definitely like to spend time with my partner. That's when we really truly connect. And hand in hand, I would say 50-50. It's also physical touch, because I need that affection. I constantly need to be like held and loved and touched. And so that's really important to me too. And also, obviously, this podcast is about sex and talking about sex. And so kind of falls in line with what my love language is into, for sure. How different do you think your view of your relationships now is different from how it was when you grew up, or what you were taught as a kid? And how do you, how has maturity sort of brought you to this point?
Yeah, so being Latina, right? I was raised by my grandmother, very old, traditional form of what a woman should be to a man. I mean, it was like, you better cook, you better clean, and if your man cheats on you, it's your fault, and you know what I mean. Those type of things where it was this teaching of servitude, right? Which I think is very important in a relationship. You know what I mean? But to the point, I find as I was growing up, watching so many women lose themselves in that and not being fulfilled internally, and just always chalking it up to like, oh, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. And, we have a very, our culture is very based on patriarchy, right? So when it comes to like the man being in charge and you serving him, it's like you don't really have much of a voice. But I've seen that evolve throughout the years. I've seen women, become more leaders in the home. And although I don't want to take away from the man's position, right? I just think that the way I've evolved is learning that, number one, realizing I can't do everything by myself. You know what I'm saying? And that there's been times where I've caught myself even craving just holding somebody's hand. You know what I mean? And I had never felt that before. Um, but in this time, I'm just taking time to heal, because I've been through a lot of abusive relationships, a lot of relationships that were more taking from me than giving anything back, and just learning how to balance that, right? Because nobody's perfect, and everyone, especially, as you get older, everyone's gonna come with baggage. They have, other relationships with children, and still have to maintain those relationships with another adult that they used to love and they were with for years. So just learning how to balance that and understanding my place, my boundaries, what I'm going to tolerate, what I won't tolerate. There's a talk about open relationships. There's talk about all these different things. Like, what am I comfortable with? What am I okay with? And I think that's the space that I am right now. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, trying to figure that out. And that is really what life is all about, truly, trying to figure out what is truly authentically you. So, I love that you're kind of exploring all of these options. And we talked about that in one of my other podcasts, relationship options, and really trying to figure out what would work really best for you. And that's so key. In relationships, you really need to know that the other person cares about you, and how do they do that for you. Acts of service is one of the other, pillars of the book, and acts of service really show like the behavior, the day-to-day behavior of the other person, and how they really treat you. What do they do for you? There really cannot be any abuse, and you mentioned that you had been in abusive relationships, and I can relate to that, and it's amazing how we as women put up with so much because of what we're taught by society, and because of what we're taught by our family. We're really taught to be, we're really taught to be abused in certain ways. And when you realize that that you don't need to do that in a relationship, and you realize that you can really truly be happy, number one, without a relationship. And if you are truly happy in your own self, in your own life, that really is going to bring positivity to you. What other nuggets could you pass on to other young women of the world?
Well, I've always known that I've been, like sex in my life, although I've suffered through abuse, um, as an adult, I realized that it is part of also my love language and how I express myself, right? So, like, when I'm super, super stressed out, it's like that's when I'm feeling like horny. You know what I'm saying? That's when I'm feeling like, oh my God. But if I'm not in a relationship, it's like, okay, am I going to call somebody? Who am I? Am I talking to anybody right now? Am I talking to them? Who are they linked to? You know what I mean? There's that trust factor. You know what I mean? Do I got to put up with them wanting something to me that I'm not comfortable with today? It's like, as a woman, you're able to express yourself, but like only so much, right? Because if they're like, oh, I want this and I want that, and you're not feeling it, it's like, okay, am I going to argue? Am I going to say no? Or am I just going to let it happen, even though this is not something I want to do today? You know? So, so I've been learning that about myself too, learning my own boundaries and not putting myself in where I'm going to feel, I'm going to walk away feeling less than, right? Like I was looking for this, but and plus, every man has their own like style of making love or sex. You know what I mean? So just learning like, how far is somebody going to take it with your consent or without your consent, learning how much you trust that person to let them into that space of your life. So I've been learning that too, being single, and I've had a few long-term relationships, but I haven't been married. You know what I mean? So that's one thing that I've been navigating. Like, well, I'm in my 40s. Do I want to get married, or is this something that I still feel like it's necessary for me to have that full family? So for so long, I was chasing that whole family, nuclear family that didn't pan out. But yeah, like there's still time. My aunts get hit on, they're 60 years old. You know what I mean? So I always saw that like there's still time. Ladies, women, and men get married when they're 80s, 90s. Not that I want to do that, but but just saying there's still time, and life is good, and just to embrace every second. And I'm learning that that's okay. Where I'm at is okay, and not feeling
Exactly.
less. We're not feeling less.
Exactly. Right, exactly. And where you are in life is okay. And, it's so interesting that like society teaches us that, you have to have a relationship. But when you look at the statistics of relationships and marriage, marriage has decreased so significantly in the last 50 years. Before 70% of people were married, and now maybe 40% of adults are married. Those statistics aren't exact, but we did talk about it in another one of the podcasts. And, our society is still teaching us that we have to have this like, family unit, marriage, etc., in order to like be completely whole and happy in the world. And that really is not the case. I mean, I have gone through a divorce, and I know that having done those things did not bring me happiness. What truly did bring me happiness was finding what I really needed in my life for myself in terms of relationships and happiness in general. For me, it's like I really want to help people to learn things in a way that's not the hard way. Have you learned anything the hard way that you would like to pass along to other women?
Learned a lot of things the hard way.
I feel
what
the
what
same
I,
way.
what I would like to pass along to women is that whether you like it or not, men are men, right? So we can't think for them. We can't, yes, you can teach people how to you by how you react to certain things, but you're still dealing with a whole other person who has been taught a whole other different way, whether they agree with you or not. If they're not respecting you, or you see these red flags, and I know we talk about red flags and all this stuff all the time, but like it's for real. If you see these red flags and little things, you have to really know if that person's going to respect your boundaries. If they don't respect your boundaries, or they're quick to fly off the handle, or you you expect something, or you talk about something, and then you get the response where, well, this is how I am, and if you don't like it, then oh well. Like, you really need to, people are going to show you who they are in the beginning. You can't change people. It's how they
That's
react
right.
afterward. So if you're
Mhm.
not paying attention to how they were before and after these conversations or after their reaction towards your boundaries, I would say that is my biggest advice is watch how people pay attention and respect your boundaries. If they don't, then you're going to get yourself into a real bad situation. And sometimes it's a lot harder to get out and it's a lot, and some of them you can't come back. So I think that's the most important advice I would give a younger me or a younger woman who's dealing with like, should I red flags or should I ignore them or make excuses for them? Like, don't, because they're showing you exactly who they are. And when you see it, believe
Absolutely. Behavior tells you everything. And if you're not liking behavior and you've voiced that you don't like the behavior and it hasn't changed, then that is the person. And you are not going to get them to change. And you're going to have to deal with that behavior in your relationship or your situationship or whatever you want to call it. But the point is, the person is going to continue doing those things. So do you put up with it? Or do you move on? And that is a choice that we do have. And oftentimes, as women, I see that we make excuses for our partners or our friends or whatever it is. And we try to justify what they're doing because we truly like them and do want to spend more time with them. But if you have red flags flying all over the place, you really need to focus
it's not a
on,
carnival.
and it's not a carnival. You definitely need to think about that and decide whether you want to stick around or move on to, greener pastures. Um, yeah, so absolutely. So I am a huge safe sex advocate, and I believe that adult sex is protected sex. And so I always say, ladies, if you are, dealing with a person who doesn't want to use protection, you're dealing with a boy. A man will man up and put on a condom regardless because he knows that he wants you to be protected and he should want to be protected himself. So, how do you handle those situations?
Um, I first of all, I get tested regularly. I get tested regularly. If I stop a relationship, I'm getting tested. During off the relationship, I'm getting tested. I'm constantly getting tested, but I do practice sex and I do ask them to use a condom. Like even you have those instances where you do have boyfriends and they are cheating on you and they're not going to tell you. You know what I mean? So it's really, your boundary. But yeah, if you're requiring it and they don't respect it, then you're dealing with somebody who does not respect you outside of relationship as well.
That's right. And again, behavior is everything. So if they are behaving in a way that you don't want them to, and it's against what you are demanding of them in that moment, it's impossible to enjoy sex if your head isn't right, right? If your head
Absolutely.
if it's not in the right space.
Hmm.
And if you are worried about, sexually transmitted diseases because you don't know this person's, status in terms of, his medical status, that is not going to put you in the right headspace. So headspace is so important and feeling safe is so important. And obviously, in a long term relationship, when people have tested together and decide at that point that they want to, go unprotected, I'm all for that too. But you really do have to have those conversations in order to protect yourself. And so I love that you're being so vulnerable and honest with me about this because it is really such an important thing that I think that all people, all women should really know and not feel embarrassed or ashamed to talk about or bring up to their partners, and to ask for what want to protect themselves so that they can get in a good headspace and they can really truly enjoy themselves because really it's all about pleasure. And if you're only, looking at the man's pleasure and not really focusing on how to get yourself in a good space to get your pleasure needs met, then we're really missing out. So,
Absolutely. I agree.
absolutely.
I've
Mm-hmm.
had I've had my best sexual encounters, just feeling safe and comfortable, and even you're vulnerable, right? So you gotta be open, and you can't be completely open with everybody, but when you're with somebody that you care about, or even that you both mutually want to have a good sexual experience, then my main thing is What I really want to tell people on this topic of protection is those reactions when they're like, oh, what, you think I'm dirty? Oh, you don't trust me? Those are the ones you got to be careful with. And those are the ones that you're like, okay, yes, now I do. And if you can't provide me or still want to mess with them, like I would say, go the extra mile and tell them to give you your papers. It should be something. I say it in the beginning. I get tested regularly and I would prefer we use a condom today, and if something changes later on, then we'll talk about it. But for right now, this is what we're doing. And if you don't want to, you can leave, or I'm going to leave, you know.
Yes. And you know what? You can always stand up and walk away. You know,
As women, I don't think
it,
we're
it's
given
it's
that.
okay. It's even in the middle of it. You can always stand up and walk away. If at any point in the whole event, you aren't comfortable and you're not getting heard, you can always stand up and walk away. And I want to really empower women to really take ownership of their own bodies and to protect themselves and to, be their own advocates because only we, can protect ourselves. And, our body is our own and it's ours to protect. Nobody else can do it for you. So you really have to kind of think about these things ahead of time in order to know how you want to, move forward with talking about and conversing about these topics, in the moment, because that's when it becomes really difficult, right? That's when it's like, oh, well, I'm kind of like, feeling it, but then I'm also feeling like he's not respecting me.
Right.
So what do you do at that moment, So having these conversations is like so essential. It's always okay just to get up and walk away, and that is just fine. And you
I
know
need a
what?
minute. I need a minute is probably one of my favorite lines. I need a minute. Give me a
That's a good one, I need a minute.
whether that means
And
to walk away or just take a
if that
breather.
means to like get up and go to the bathroom and
Mhm.
collect yourself and decide what you want to do, I think that that's always, a really smart thing to give yourself that space. And that could be at any time. It could be at the beginning of the date, or it could be at the end. And it's so important to be able to, feel empowered enough to do that for yourself. So, this podcast is about destigmatizing conversations about sex. And I know that you've been listening to the podcast every week and cheering me on, and I so appreciate your support. Yay! And I just want to know, like, what you think about the topics and about, what I'm trying to do here.
First of all, I'm very proud of you. I'm
Thank
very proud of you. And I think that this podcast is different because it's really informative, but it's not in a way where it's boring or it's too medical, right? I love that you can incorporate real life experiences and talk about with different people these type of topics because a lot of people do have a problem talking about it, right? But the more you give them the information and different ways of saying no or ways of talking about these really touchy subjects, it becomes easier and it becomes um, part of taking control of your self-worth, your health, your body positivity, and the way you have an outlook on how you present yourself out to everyone else. So I think it's very important and I love it. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And
And I send
it
it
has
to
been.
people too, just to let you know.
Yay, yes, definitely. Share it with your friends. Sharing is caring after all, right? So I want to just take a moment right now just to thank you so much for being on this podcast. And I want the listeners to know where they can find you, where they can listen to your music. So why don't you go ahead and tell everybody?
Thank you for having me. Please me, Evelyn. I'm so grateful to be here today. You can find me at Rose Red Music, RozeRedmusic on all social media platforms.
Awesome. So you guys really go listen to the song. It's beautiful. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's got such an awesome vibe. And I'm definitely going to be playing it a lot in the future. So, so go
It's a good
out and
workout
listen
song.
to it. It is a good workout song in many ways. um, so anyway, I want to thank you so much again. And everyone listening, If anything that I said resonated with you today, please go to Apple Podcasts, show me some 5-star love. And again, I appreciate you being on today. And until next time, I'll see you on Please Me. Bye-bye.